Welcome back. Hunter Biden's defense team expected to announce today whether the first son will testify in his gun trial. The trial resumes this morning in about half an hour. The Wall Street Journal out with a piece titled Hunter Biden Trial Reveals Dark Family Moments and Tests Father's Campaign. Politico last week with this. Joe Biden's worries grow as Hunter Biden's trial begins. Joining me now is Republican strategist and Madison firm lead attorney Jonathan Madison, along with Democrat consultant and former House Judiciary Committee chief counsel Julian Epstein. Great to see you guys. Thanks very much for joining me once again. Julian, what about this trial and the impact on Joe Biden's reelection? Could it spell trouble for Joe?
It could. There are embarrassing moments and embarrassing testimony. Joe Biden was at his son's elbow. His son apparently wasn't paying taxes and was involved in these gun violations. That said, I was very critical, Maria, of the Trump trial in Manhattan. I think it was an abuse of power by the Manhattan district attorney. I don't think the case should have been brought for a host of reasons. And by the same reasoning, I don't think this Hunter Biden gun charge should have been brought. I think it is an abusive prosecution. I think it's a makeup call because the Justice Department failed to go after Hunter on the tax charges. And while it's embarrassing for the president, I just think this is the kind of thing that would have been better handled in some type of appropriate plea deal, some type of probation or some type of financial penalty. But this is the kind of case that I don't think should have been brought in. It's the beginning, I think, of an era of lawfare where we're just going to start going after political figures in a way that we would never go after them if they were just ordinary citizens. And I just think that's wrong. The same reasoning, for the same reason I thought the Trump trial in Manhattan was a gross abuse of power.
And the Trump trial is just one more thing on top of a gross abuse over the last several years. Let's go back to the Russia collusion story, where the FBI pursued this story that Trump colluded with Russia on no evidence. We all know that now. And yet you have, Andrew McCabe, former FBI guy on CNN the other day saying, oh, everybody in the FBI is scared that Trump's going to send them to jail. Well, why? Because you know what you've done. You know what you did back in 2016 and 17 by pursuing this story when you know you had no evidence of any such thing. Meanwhile, it divided the country, ripped the country apart with this crazy story.
Yeah, well, look, there were many people that were guilty of gross overstatement. The Obama Justice Department authorized counterintelligence investigations on Trump officials. Night after night on mainstream media, and particularly the liberal cable networks, there were allegations that we were about to see a frog march of Donald Trump on Russia collusion when there was never any evidence of criminality. And the left never apologized for that. They never said sort of mea culpa on any of that. Jeff Gerth in the Columbia School of Journalism, Columbia Journalism Review, did a great story about how the media has just sort of transitioned from being this independent, rigorous, critical thinking, questioning of authority kind of institution that it has been historically into this sort of cheerleader for the left. It was very profitable for a lot of media figures, media groups, but there really was a lack of responsibility and independence, I think, and that whole Russia collusion sort of puts that on display.
Well, you're right, and with the exception of here, because I raised my hand about it, said this doesn't make sense to me. And tried to be independent thinking about it, and I got slammed by the mainstream media. So there's been no accountability. You're spot on. Meanwhile, a CBS News YouGov poll, Jonathan, shows President Biden and former President Trump neck and neck in national polling. Trump is leading 50% to Biden's 49%, but this poll also reveals Trump's recent conviction is not a factor for more than half the voters, with issues like inflation, crime, the border, much more important to those voters. The latest Fox News poll shows Trump leading Biden in Nevada, Arizona, and Florida, while the pair are in a dead heat in Virginia. Voters in all four of those states trust Trump to do a better job on the economy, with him winning by 16% in Nevada. Those voters also trust Trump by a landslide on the border. He's winning by around 20% on border issues in all of those four states, Jonathan. And let's not forget the massive money haul that Trump was able to rake in despite the guilty verdict. Your reaction?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned the money haul. I was just at the San Francisco fundraiser he hosted on Thursday, and he raised about $12 million in the course of 24 hours. Then he made his way on down to Newport, raised more money down there. So this month he's raised about $141 million. Now think about that. The guy was just convicted on 34 counts, and he's raised $141 million. I mean, if there's anything that suggests it's an embarrassment for the Democratic Party, it just shows, and I think the polls suggest this as well, and those numbers are only going to increase, Maria, that the country is very much aware that there's been an overreach on the left. And I think those numbers are only going to increase because of it. And there's this sentiment nationwide, and we even heard it down in San Francisco, believe it, of all places, right, the deep blue state. You have this sense that this is not any longer the people v. Donald Trump. It's the culture v. conservative America. And everybody feels like they're on trial. So I think those numbers are going to increase. I think the money's going to increase.
Well, look, I mean, Julian, you just mentioned it. You were spot on the lawfare comment, and that's what's going on here. People are not buying this conviction. They're not buying all these attacks on Trump.
Well, look, I think the effect of the Trump conviction in Manhattan has been negligible. If anything, it's showed about a 1 point, maybe a 1.5 point loss of independent supporters for Trump. And I think my guess is that will be fleeting in the same way Biden's State of the Union bounce was a fleeting bounce. I don't think that's the big issue here. I think the big issue is Biden continues to be underwater on the major issues, the economy in particular. And you see immigration, his handling of foreign affairs, on down the line of all the major issues. He's underwater on almost every issue other than abortion. Yep. And the mistake that Biden is making right now, the message coming out of the White House is one, anti-Trump, and two, abortion. And they keep doubling down on that. And I think given the fact that Biden is underwater on almost every single issue, that is not going to be enough for him. What the party needs to do, and I've argued, you and I have talked about this before, Maria, the party needs to make a major shift to the center on economic issues. This notion that we can have $2 trillion of annual debt, and that is not having an effect on stubborn inflation. I mean, that's nonsense. The Biden executive order on immigration, I think a lot of people see through that as too little, too late, and a little bit insincere. And even then, you're allowing 4 million new illegal immigrants coming across the border on an annual basis. So I think what the left and what the White House is failing to do is to recognize how seriously this administration is underwater on economic and sort of cultural left issues. And rather than just saying we are anti-Trump and we are pro-abortion, they need to make a major shift on some of these issues because their messaging is just not getting through. And you put that together with the fact. Yep. You put that together with the fact that people have real questions about the president's mental competence, and you're looking at a recipe for disaster here for Democrats.
I think the Democrats are getting desperate. They're getting very worried as a result of all this. These stories, Biden's behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping from the Wall Street Journal last week, Julian, and then this weekend. Now, who's next in line after President Kamala Harris? Because Kamala Harris is not getting the support either.
Well, you know, we spoke about groupthink in the context of the Russia collusion investigation. There is a lot of groupthink on the left in terms of whether the president should have been a candidate. I took a position a year ago in a piece in the Wall Street Journal saying that Biden should not be the candidate for the Democrats, and I took a lot of guff for that. And I think a lot of people, like James Carville and others, are coming out there right now saying, you know, he might not be the best candidate. He's the guy saying, I'm the only guy that can beat Trump. Well, you know what? He might be the only guy that can't beat Trump. So there are a lot of questions about where the Democrats are. I think the groupthink has been their biggest enemy, just going along with far left policies and not questioning the fact whether Biden is in fact the best candidate in 2024.
Well, Jonathan, anytime the Trump campaign comes up with names or expectations that somebody's going to be in the cabinet, the muddying up of that person begins. And the stakes for President Trump's vice presidential pick are intensifying. Similar thing going on now. The Republican National Convention is a month away. The election just under 5 months away. And insiders are telling Fox Digital that among the front runners in terms of Trump's VP candidate, Democrats are fearing Florida Senator Marco Rubio the most, calling him a disciplined communicator who rarely makes mistakes. Rubio also speaks Spanish, could appeal to Hispanic voters. I spoke with another shortlist candidate, J.D. Vance, yesterday on him potentially being the running mate. He joined me yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures. Watch.
We've had some conversations with the Trump team, but I've actually not spoke about the vice presidential thing with the president directly. And until I do, I sort of assume this is a lot of media speculation. I want to help Donald Trump get elected because it's really important that he become the next president. But I've got an important job for the people of Ohio and the United States Senate. That's what I'm focused on. And if that changes, you'll be one of the first to know.
Jonathan, as soon as there's speculation of anybody joining Trump, that person faces a lot of muddying up from the left. So I'm watching what is said about all of these candidates now that we have this short list. Your reaction?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would keep your eyes on Marco Rubio. He's the leader of the Senate Intelligence Committee. I mean, it's really going to put Donald Trump in a position where he can kind of get tough on those rogue policies and whatnot. But beyond that, Donald Trump is already carrying more Latino votes than the left. So, you know, to the extent that Marco Rubio can assist him in that endeavor, I mean, it's going to have a huge impact. So that's why the Democrats are afraid. They're afraid he's going to get even more support from wider margins.
All right. Really smart conversation, gentlemen. I so appreciate you both. Jonathan Madison, Julian Epstein, thanks very much, guys. We will see you soon.